My name is Rory Hector, and I'm going to talk about our brief announcement paper on optimal doorway egress by autonomous robots. So the classical robot swarm model typically considers the robot swarm to be modeled as points in the two-dimensional real plane. The robots are autonomous and act in look, compute, move, or LCM cycles, where a look means the robot takes a snapshot of its current surroundings. Compute, the robot performs a computation based on its current snapshot, and move, the robot performs an action based on its compute step. The robots are typically assumed to be oblivious, retaining no memory of past LCM cycles. The robots are also assumed to be anonymous and identical, which means that there's no ability to distinguish between any two robots. The robots also have no common coordinate system, meaning there's no agreement on up, down, left, and right, or distance. We consider the problem of doorway egress, where the real plane is bisected by an infinite line with a single gap in it. And this straight line with a gap represents a wall with a door. And the problem of doorway egress is for the robots to move to the door without collisions and disappear through it. And this resembles robots evacuating from a workspace after completing their task. So it would look something like this. They all move to the door without collisions and subsequently disappear. The robots begin in arbitrary initial positions on one side of the wall. The robots disappear at some LCM cycle after reaching the door. We consider 3 different abilities for this problem and also some variations to the classical model. The first of these abilities is visibility, where a robot can determine the location of all robots in every snapshot. So for example, these 2 endpoint robots can see each other even though all robots are collinear. There's the ability of synchrony, where LCM cycles are synchronized across all robots. So it looks something like this. They all perform their snapshot at the same time, their compute at the same time, and their move at the same time. And then the same thing for all subsequent LCM cycles. Then there's the ability of lights, where each robot has a light showing one color from a fixed, constant sized color palette. Lights persist until changed in an LCM cycle. So for example, here we have 1 robot colored red and 3 robots colored green. The red robot moves and changes its color. Then the green robots change their color and subsequently move, though they have no agreement on time or synchrony, so they don't necessarily move at the same time, and one can in fact perform its snapshot while another is in motion. We consider a variation to the classical model that isn't an ability, but is the variation of so-called fat robots, where the robots are disks of unit diameter. Since they are disks of unit diameter, they have an inherent agreement on unit distance. This model does have unique challenges, however, such as not all robots can fit through the doorway simultaneously as they can with point robots. So for example, here, only 5 robots can fit in the doorway at once, and if another robot tried to move into the doorway at the same time, it must collide with another robot or the wall. Also, robots can be initially hemmed in, such as the center robot in the square. It cannot move until the other robots have moved first. And then once they've disappeared through the door, these robots will move to the door and then they will disappear. So in general, the problem with so-called fat robots is they cannot rely heavily on infinite precision. Fat robots do have the ability of grid alignment in our paper, where that means the robots are initially aligned to an imaginary integer grid, as shown. The robots can, however, move from this grid at any point. It's just they are initially aligned to it. We evaluate our algorithms using time, where time is defined as the number of epochs in an execution of an algorithm, where an epoch is the smallest duration in which every robot performs at least 1 LCM cycle. Our paper has these results. So the first result is that is for no abilities. So with no abilities, that is no visibility, no synchrony, and no lights, robots can solve doorway egress in linear time, avoiding collisions. We've also shown that with any one of these abilities, the robots can solve doorway egress in constant time, avoiding collisions. And the constant time algorithms are asymptotically optimal, since each robot must move at least once to reach the doorway. We conjecture that strictly greater than constant time is needed if the robots have no abilities. Finally, we look at our algorithms for fat robots, where the lower bound is non-constant. So there is this N over W factor, and that is because there are N robots of unit diameter, and the doorway is only of width W. So it takes N over W steps for all to fit through, and then it'll take omega square root n epochs before the innermost robot can move in a tightly packed initial configuration. We've shown that with grid alignment, visibility in either one of synchrony or lights, we can solve doorway egress and optimal time avoiding collisions.